So you know the way a jersey reminds you of one particular person, or it can do? I don't know why, because I wouldn't have seen him play that much, but Kevin Hennessy, the big, tall, I think he was corner forward, full forward for Cork, particularly in the 80s.
Like he the goal?
Yeah, left-hander, black goal, a helmet. This jersey just reminds me of him. I don't know why. Is there anyone in particular that the Clare jersey reminds you of?
I suppose, like, if you look back at those old shots of, like, Ger Loughnane wearing them, it even reminds me of that. That one would remind me of Tomás Mulcahy.
Yeah, lifting the trophy.
What one would this remind you of?
Jeez, a good question. Loughnane would be the one that really stands out from that generation, particularly the unsuccessful Clare generation. He's the one that really stands out.
Well, they've had a lot of those now, so you know, if we're going to be fair about it.
I was at a quiz recently, actually, by the way, and there's a really good piece of trivia. The only 3-time All-Star to have never played a game in Croke Park, never played a championship game in Croke Park, and he's from Clare.
Wow. Give me sort of the generation. Give me
but you're going to know the generation. The All-Stars only came in 71.
Yeah.
And, like, it's not going to be anyone from 80s onwards.
Is it Ger Loughnane?
No, it's a goalkeeper.
Seamus Dirac.
3-time All-Star and never played a championship game in Croke Park.
Was that back in the era when they were in 3 league finals in a row, winning 2 against Kilkenny?
That's the one. That's the caveat, was that it never played a championship game in Croke Park.
So was that like 76, 7, 78?
Ish, yeah. But it's an amazing statistic, really.
That was the year of the league finals anyway. By the way, we got these jerseys, orgaretro.com, and put in the promo code #OurGame and you'll get 15% off. Who would have thought you'd see me in a Clare jersey? Well, plenty of the supporters seem to think I hate Clare. I don't. I just call it as it is.
I just like to say to people out there, he chose the Clare jersey over the Cork jersey.
Yeah, but like, I mean, and the Cork thing is, Tip have had more success than defeats against Cork in recent times, and certainly I've obviously won more both Munsters and All Irelands. So that sort of rivalry is still there, but I haven't had to taste defeat in sort of the most exacting games, the All Ireland level games, the season ending.
Let's call a spade. You're just poking a finger in an open Clare wound at the moment by wearing that jersey.
Clare knocked Tip out in 2018, to be fair. I think we all remember that. But anyway, we're here to talk about the Cork-Clare rivalry. That's why we're wearing the shirts. There's a fair old history between them. Now, over the course of it, I think Cork have won maybe 4 times as many championship games that they've played. But I saw a good one. There was an article on the 42 about 1914, so this was before the curse of Biddy Early. Like, Clare had won one Munster title already, but it was like a walkover, so it wasn't really done on the field. But in 1914, Jim O'Hare, who was father of the legendary broadcaster Micheál O'Hare, trained Clare to their 2nd Munster title, and that was their first one on the pitch, because the 1899 came via that walkover that I mentioned.
Mad, some stuff. Yeah, it's mad. Yeah, when you really go back through it, it's the long and one of the most long and storied histories there is. There's a great rivalry.
Any particular games stand out to you, or is there a couple that you want to even touch?
The 95 one would definitely stand out for me, because kind of until you go back and realise it, geez, and you remember all the things that happened in that game. Clare, obviously, Loughnane had taken over from Lane Gaynor. The kind of things around the things that happened in the game, it ended up 2-13 to 3-9, but Kevin Murray got a late goal for Cork, and it looked like Cork were kind of home and hose then. And Seány McMahon had broken his collarbone in the 55th minute, and they'd 3 subs made, so they'd no more subs they could make.
Away.
Yeah, threw him up into the forward line, and they ended up forcing, I think it was Timmy Kelleher, out over the sideline. They won a line ball, Fergie Toohey hitting the line ball, and Clare got the winning score out of it. It's just phenomenal stuff. Ollie Baker came off the bench that day.
Seány McMahon and Seány McMahon didn't make the minor team.
Yeah,
he made a fair career out of himself.
An unbelievable career, in fairness. Like probably the great centre back of probably that generation, that decade, I'd say. But it was just even Loughnane saying about Cork were up at 5 points at some stage, I think about 40-45 minutes, and Loughnane said he needed to change things up. He started pacing up and down the field, he started going in, and you could just imagine him doing it. There was a quote after saying, I just went in and told him that we were going to win. And you know the way, and like the same at half time of the 95 All Ireland, you know, Ger Loughnane interviewed on the pitch after, Ger, are you going to do it? We're going to do it. And you just You would. He just had the way about him. You'd believe him if he said it.
And the same then with Davy with before the 2013 All-Ireland, that he was asked by, was it Clare McNamara? And he was like, yeah, we're going to win, or whatever way he put it. So there's sort of, that seems to be a theme of these games.
There's a question as well. I think Ger Canning asked him, I think it was before one of those games, are you going to win? Don't ask me that. You know the answer.
So we looked over a good few games, and we'll kind of mention a few of them in brief, like Semplegate 2007, horrifically poor game as it turned out.
Terrible game, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a row when they were coming onto the field. They both came out at the same time, as Tyrone and Dublin found out recently in Omagh.
Yeah.
That's not a recipe for I think happy days. But Clare ended up with 4 lads suspended. Cork had 3 in the aftermath of that game. 97. So I think this was, you've mentioned that era with Seamus Rack getting the All-Stars. Clare probably felt they had a right chance in 77 and 78, and this would have been Cork were on top in Munster at the time.
Clare had a good side as well, and obviously won a league title as well, but just couldn't get over the line in Championship hurling against them.
But that game in 77, which they lost 4-15 to 4-10, the day went down in infamy when it was discovered after the match that armed robbers had made away with the takings from the gate of £24,579 during the second half.
Imagine if that happened now.
That's some stuff.
Imagine if that.
Well, you think how much a replayed All-Ireland makes these days? Is it 5 million or something like that?
Yeah, that's what, maybe things like that happening are one of the reasons why you don't really deal with cash in the day of a match anymore.
Yeah. And 78, I think Clare probably felt that was their greatest chance then, and they missed at that time. I interviewed Mark Ellis, who has kind of been in and out of the Cork team for the last number of years. His mother is from Tulla, as far as I remember.
Oh yeah, David McInerney.
Yeah, and kind of interviewed him. This would have been 2014, something like that. And he goes, he was asked what was his first game inter-county. He goes, it would have, as a young lad, it would have been a Clare game. My mother's from Clare, and I would have followed the Clare team of the 90s in 97 when they won the All-Ireland, and followed them in all their games in 98. Shawnee McMahon and James O'Connor and those fellas I would have looked up to as a kid.
It's gas, isn't it, if you have a parent from another county or even, another club, how much you have a kind of an affection for them, I suppose, and a following for them.
Yeah.
But it's good to see, him admitting it at least and putting it out there.
Yeah, like we're obviously going to come on to 2013. Unbelievable games. But I did a column for when I used to work with the Star. I had to write Gerald McMahon's column one day.
Look at you.
A bit of crack, like very engaging character. But I lifted out a quote from it, and he goes, I remember Clare in 95, we were in a similar situation with a new style of play and being hammered by Kilkenny in the league final. The collateral damage caused by that was very hard to overcome, and we were lucky that we managed to get past Cork and Munster that year when you could see there was real damage caused. 20 years on, any Clare person will tell you the Rebel game was the one time that Lady Luck really smiled down on us. Now, I corrected him immediately during the conversation and said, what about that time that Declan Ryan put one over against Clare in 97 and it was waved wide? And he goes, well, otherwise, that sort of thing. And of course, Johnny Lahey missed a chance in 97 also in the All-Ireland final. But anyway, be that as it may, 1995, the game that helped end the famine.
Well, that's what they said, and even Davy referenced back. It's similar to like other counties. Sometimes it's not the All-Ireland win that they reference; it's some big mental block or hurdle or obstacle that they overcame along the way. Like having a man who's basically got one arm in the forward line playing. Like they were basically handicapped. They were playing 15 against 14, but yet Shawnee McMahon's drive and will to just have some sort of an impact on the game saw them get that line ball, which saw them go on and win the game as well. I had forgotten as well, Jim McInerney, David McInerney's father, who's playing now on the Clare team, was playing that day as well. And it's just even going down through the team sheet to just kind of rekindle some great memories of times kind of gone by, like Fergie Tuohy's and Fergal Hegarty and all these maybe lads that were the unsung heroes of that time. Stephen Sheedy, all these, John Chaplin, all these kind of names as well. Yeah, it really kind of rolls back to memory.
Hard to beat Fingers O'Connell, PJ O'Connell, huh?
That I remember doing that around the garden. Like he was just classic. He had the moustache and the fingers. He wasn't like strutting. That was just the way he walked. Yeah. Like it was nothing. But it was like before Vince McMahon or Conor McGregor or anyone was doing it. Like he should have painted the Fingers O'Connell strut.
It was a real dude sort of.
On
him, and a porn star mustache.
Yeah, and he had the kind of a mullet. Yeah, he didn't have too much at the side. Yeah.
Michael Ryan of Tip would have rivaled him with that sort of mullet vibe?
I loved the moustaches and everything about him. Yeah, fair.
Did you have a quote from that game that you wanted to?
No, there was just one about Davy was saying about that game. He just said, Cork were better hurlers than us today, but we beat them with sheer commitment. Our blocking, tackling and passion were unbelievable. We were through to a Munster final thanks to a man with a broken collarbone and a midfielder packing me up for the winning goal. We had done to Cork what they had done to us for years, you know, and that's
for generations.
For generations, yeah, and like it was just getting that kind of hurdle out of the way allowed them to go on and do what they unfortunately did later on the year and beating Offaly in the All-Ireland final. But like that summer I remember being up, Offaly actually played down in the 95 All-Ireland semi-final and Clare played Galway Offaly played in the first semi-final and they played in the second semi-final when they were played in the same day. And do you remember the banner roar? Like that's literally like symbolic of the 1995 summer.
Here, let's play a bit of it there.
63 long years we'll wait around no more. You ain't heard nothing yet till you hear the banner roar.
This part now is great. What sort of backwards yolks are you down in Clare?
I remember my father doing that. Like it was all fun and games when Offaly before the All-Ireland. He wasn't doing it after, but he was going around the kitchen doing the banner roar. It was after that semi-final because that was the first time we'd heard it. But that's like iconic of that, like middle of that decade. That's what, like, you lived and breathed that stuff throughout the summer. Like it was brilliant.
Do you know what's an underrated Clare Cork game? Was 2005. Anthony Daly was manager, and it was an All-Ireland semi-final, and everyone expected
that
Cork.
was a sickener.
Yeah, Cork went on to win the All-Ireland, and everyone expected them to win that game. But Clare were up by 6 with, what was it, about 20 minutes to go, and Kieran Shannon did an interview with Daly. I'd say this is about 6 or 7 years ago, and he goes, the ordinary Joe Soap went from, like, this was the aftermath of it. He said the ordinary Joe Soap went from blaming Fitzy in the goal to blaming our half-forward line. I went down to Fitzy at one stage, and he knew I was coming, I'd say. Again, he impersonates Davy apparently in the interview. Goes, where the feck do you want me to hit it? But that was one of those games where I was like, geez, Cork are in trouble here. Clare might actually do it, even though they seem more limited. But if I remember correctly, Seán Óg Ó hAilpín came up with a great final 20 minutes in that game.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think it was 16 points to 15. I seem to remember. There's something, or either that or 17, 16. But Clare looked like they were home. And yeah, Cork just produced a massive kind of maybe last 15, 20 minutes kind of by Seán Óg, who was kind of their inspiration leader at that time.
That's a fair memory. It was, 16 points to 15. And I was thinking Seán Óg Ó hAilpín had scored. Yeah, he scored a point, if I remember correctly, burst out from the half back line, usual, and drove it over.
That was rare enough for him to actually shoot for points. He invariably gave the ball in and usually gave a very good ball in.
Bursting out, yes, scoring. No,
yeah, I think Tony Griffin getting All-Star that year, or was it the year after? But he was outstanding as well for Clare.
He got
that was, and I remember like Dalo wasn't long retired at that stage. Dalo retired in what, maybe 02 or in around then, and had come straight back in nearly as Clare manager. And imagine like if he'd gotten Clare to an All-Ireland final. Things could be so much different, and obviously that Cork team were in their pomp at that time as well. That was as good as, like, they looked nearly unbeatable at that stage.
When you think about it, Anthony Daly's 2 unbelievable chances of getting to All-Ireland finals both came against Cork. One, the Clare man over Dublin in 2013. The other as the Clare manager in 2005.
That's right, yeah.
And both of them in great positions to win it, and it just didn't quite happen.
Tony Griffin's All-Star, was 2006. It was the year after he was outstanding against Kilkenny.
Yeah. Well, let's come to 2013. At the time, arguably up there in the best hurling games we'd ever seen in terms of excitement. Like, completely different to what we'd seen in the games between Galway, Kilkenny and Tip Kilkenny in the previous couple of years. This was just, it was a Munster final played at Croke Park essentially, the way it was so open. And one of the things that stood out to me from the first game,
you're saying Munster hurling is open?
It's fairly open. Things have changed a little bit, but like if you look at those Cork-Waterford games during the middle of the noughties, it kind of had that sort of feeling about it. That did you ever see those games where a lad might be close to a man of the match performance, but so is the lad who he's on? That happened in 2014 All-Ireland, the first game, 128 to 220, whatever it was, Tip and Kilkenny. But in this game, Conor Ryan, I think, got man of the match for Clare at centre back. Yeah. But Seamus Harnedy gave an exhibition on him at the same time.
Unbelievable.
Like, this was happening all over the field. And it's hard to beat what Anthony Nash was doing in terms of excitement. Back when you could lift up the free and bring it as far in as you wanted to. It wasn't like you had to stop it to 21. Like, the whole stadium there was a collective intake of breath when he was about to hit it. And everyone just kind of, when you hang on someone's word, you're hanging on someone's lift of a ball here.
And there was a double, like there was, in the replay game, there was a double figure amount of Clare lads on the line. All with goalie hurls in their hand. So some hurley maker down around Clare went into absolute overdrive for Pat Kelly and was making all these extra goalie. I remember thinking about it at the time. If you put the people just stand on the line and where the hurls were, the amount of space that the ball actually had to go through was so minimal. But the power he had, like he was horsing the ball good 10 yards in front of him and striking from the 13.
Fair footwork to do it.
It was serious footwork, and there was unbelievable excitement around that time.
Who's going to have that level of preparation? Only Davy Fitz, of course, as manager.
True, yeah.
And then JBM at the other side of it.
Yeah,
because there's something magnetic about his character.
Two absolute icons on the line as well. And of course that was a trilogy of games. A lot of people would forget about the Munster match that they played earlier on the year. And that was
kind of dour enough, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was dour enough, and they actually played a league promotion relegation final that went extra time earlier on in the year as well. But the Munster game, that was, Clare were obviously knocked out of the Munster Championship at a relatively early stage again, or maybe it was a semi-final, and they met up and had like
the famous tea and biscuits.
I think it was orange and biscuits, wasn't it? In Davy's house, which was a great reference point for the rest of the year. Funny enough, like if they'd been beaten at some stage, would have been saying, "What were they doing? Like going doing that."
I've heard different things, that some lads went up and they were a bit like, "Oh, this is a load of." Whatever. And other people kind of talk about it as the turning point. You've referenced it in '95, that Cork game was where they won the All-Ireland. I've heard different kind of...
Yeah, so it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, some people would say that was the night the tide turned, and other people would say like that was absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and people let us know what you've heard about, and like even any of the players.
The drawn All-Ireland final was an epic. It was different than the replay game. It was 3-16-25, but Clare dominated.
Oh yeah.
And Davy, they ended up like scrambling for the draw. I remember Horgan put over a great point out near the sideline, and Stephen Moylan had a sideline cut, and he put it dead with about a minute to go. And if he hadn't put it dead, it was down in the corner. The ball could have stayed in play, and Clare might have struggled.
Yeah, just knock it into the corner.
Knock it into the corner. Instead, Pat Kelly pucked it out, and Donald O'Donovan, in fairness to him, just ventured forward. He took a chance, and it's good initiative because there was no impact he could have in the game at cornerback. Let's say ventured forward, ended up getting a hand pass and put it over on his left hand side. And I remember Davy saying after, like he was the last lad he probably wanted in that position.
Did he go living in London? I think he's in America now.
Yeah, he moved abroad anyway after a while, and it didn't really play that much for Clare since. But that moment saved them really. And I remember Davy having a broadside at the referee after the game as well. Wasn't a bit happy. I don't know. I think that could have been, we're just a small fish. That we're just a small fish. It was. We're just a small fish. He wasn't happy at all. Man, if they'd lost that day, like Davy would have taken the roof off Croke Park. He would have just went straight through the media centre, the roof of it. His head was fit to explode, I'd say, because he was bad enough after them getting a draw. But they got a second day out of it.
Do you know what? I'm just after noticing it there. The player who decided who the hurler of the year would be that year didn't get an All-Star. Brian Murphy for Cork, cornerback. He marked Tony Kelly out of it the first day in that Munster game. And then the All-Ireland final, I think Podge Collins had a good game the first day, and he was in line to be hurler of the year. I thought he fully deserved it at that stage.
I think he got three from play, yeah.
And then he ended up, and remember he had that chance to knock it in over the line, but the keeper scrambled it away.
Yeah. He tried
to kick it instead of hit it.
He also got that outrageous point where he didn't look at the goal and scored off his hurl.
Yeah, flicked it over his head.
It was outrageous.
But like the second day, Brian Murphy was on him, and Podge ended up getting taken off probably 15 minutes to go, something like that.
Best man marker I've ever seen, I'd say.
So you're talking about Brian Murphy, who didn't get an All-Star, being the guy who probably decided who the hurler of the year was, because he had marked both candidates out of it. And actually the third nomination for hurler of the year that year was
Anthony Nash. Yeah.
Because he was such a big determinant factor in what was actually exciting that year.
Oh, unbelievable, yeah. Like they were strange games. At the time you're thinking, just Clare are going to dominate. Like this Clare team is going to dominate. And
I never bought into that. Anyway, go on.
I know Tommy Walsh did in Jackie Tyrrell's book, and I've referenced it before. Tommy went up to Jackie like one night they were out at the end of 2013 and said, "I'll take Kelly, you take Collins." That was his plan. It was his whole plan for 2014. It never surfaced, but at the time they were thrilling games. I remember that replay game. Obviously, like, there's only one place to start when you talk about the replay, and that's Seán O'Donnell.
The only place to start. Yeah. Like, actually, the impact of it was a bit of like Justin Bieberitis overnight. I remember the start of 2014 being down at a Waterford Crystal game in 6 Mile Bridge and sitting there in the crowd, and Seán O'Donnell wasn't togged out, but he came walking along with probably a coat over his head, and you hear young ones going, "There he is, there's Sod." They were calling him Sod, the initials. But yeah, he just became a superstar overnight.
It was a dream scenario because
3-3 in a hat-trick in the first half.
Yeah, like the goals were put on a play for him. He just had to finish them off. I remember Pat Donlan tore down through the middle of the Clare or the Cork defence. It was like the Red Sea opened in front of him and hand passed it off. And I think he got hand passed off another goal as well. But like, as dream scenarios go, it doesn't get much better than that. He didn't play any part in the drawn game, starts the replay and scores 3-3. It's phenomenal. Like, it's outrageous stuff.
Probably changed his life more than he would have wanted to.
Totally. It didn't change him as a player at all, because he's had an unbelievable player career. Because he's the sort of lad, I'm sure people thought at the time, this lad might come and go now maybe after that, or could ruin him, but he's had a phenomenal player career.
What about, like, we always kind of pit one player against another when we do these rivalry pieces for orgaretro.com. Who are we're gonna have to pit a couple of absolute goats against each other here with Anthony Daly and Seán Óg Ó hAilpín.
Yeah, like we're only kind of thinking about it. Two of the great number sevens.
Yeah, generally they were number seven.
Yeah, generally, yeah, like, because the half back line would have been, for Clare it would have been Doyle, McMahon and Daly, and for Cork it would have been Gardner, Kern and O'Halpine, and they were two phenomenal players.
Two fair iron walls.
Yeah, in fairness now, like I put my Cork hat here on because I'm wearing obviously the Cork Gansey. But like Seán Óg Ó hAilpín's Cork career started in 1996, spanned 3 decades to 2012. One of probably the most iconic players, but one of the most iconic figures, I'd say, in the history of the GA. You know, the great Mialamar Hurtig line always comes back to me, like, you know, his mother from Fiji, his father from Fermanagh, neither a hurling stronghold. And like, that's, you know, he wasn't, shall we say, he wasn't bred to be this GA superstar that he was. And he even says himself that he had to work so much harder because he wasn't a natural at hurling. He had to work so much harder. And I remember talking about how he fit in with the Pierce. He didn't play hurling until he was just 10 or 11, I think. And people only got to know who he was and whatever when he started playing with the club. And they're like, "Oh, you're such and such's family. You're from this house. You're from that house." And he's now known as one of the most iconic GA figures in history. It's phenomenal.
There's something about the way he burst out with the ball. And like, he had the sort of athleticism that's now common in players, that he had that anyway.
There's that famous picture of him down in, I think it's Ger Hartman's clinic, where he's doing the Russian twist with the medicine ball and he's the top off and he's absolutely ripped. He definitely has baby oil thrown on as well, because it's unnatural. Like.
Do you think Dalo would have gone with the baby oil?
I don't think so.
I think Dalo's seen this one. Also played in 3 decades.
Yeah.
Also won 3 All-Stars, and you know, the fire in the eyes and the fly bouncing off his head in the Sunday Game studio, hard beat that. But yeah, and like everyone thinks, 95, unbelievable speech, just always consistent performer. That free that ended up with, was that the free that came down for Eamon Taft to knock it in? Yeah. You loved that now, didn't you, against Offaly?
Oh God, Eamon Taft. I interviewed him a couple of years ago. It was nice. I think I got a bit of closure when I interviewed Eamon Taft and just got that out of the way. But Dale obviously put in the free that day. I think the interesting thing about the two of them as well is both number sevens, both All-Ireland winning captains, and both like inspirational leaders, like leaders of men. Like,
do you know that Daly was considered windy when he was young?
Go away, right? Yeah. Jeez, that wouldn't have been one thing I would have never even considered being thrown at him.
I don't know if I'd go as far as windy as a bad dog, but Kieran Shannon, that same interview, he said, he asked Daly about it being considered soft, and he goes, "Well, I wasn't getting stuck in by Clare Castle standards anyway. I might have got away with it in another club or two in the vicinity, but there was a certain toughness about the place in the late 70s into the early 80s. I suppose my father and uncles would have had reputations for being fairly tough, while I hadn't." Like, he was captain of Clare from 1992 to 2000. That's fair going. He was the one you, as an Offaly person, he was the one you hated.
Do you know what I mean? No, just because you thought he was almost invincible. He was just leading these kind of boys that had never really won anything before at all. And they just seemed like they were invincible at the time. And he was kind of the one that was driving the show, yeah.
Yeah, his uncle actually captained Clare to a league title in 46, Hawley was his name. But as a tip person, would have suffered an awful lot at the hands of Seán Óg Ó hAilpín, especially during the noughties when Tip were erratic at best and pretty poor at worst. It just felt like the amount of times he got onto the ball and lifted the crowd by bursting out. You know, the same way Tommy Walsh when he blasts the ball into the clouds, or the Rock O'Sullivan.
That was the thing. Certain lads have that ability. You know to say, like, when DJ gets a goal, DJ used to get a goal, it was worth 2 goals. When Seán Óg got a ball or burst out with a ball, the same as you say Tommy Walsh or Brian Lowe with the red helmet back in the day, it was worth someone else striking 2 balls. It lifted everybody around. And I rarely remember him having a bad game. One game that springs to mind, and he ended up getting kind of hurled of the year on the back of it. He got hurled of the year in 04. I remember marking Henry Shefflin in the 04 All-Ireland final, and he kept him really, really quiet. And like that's the best hurler of his generation. He was marking and kept him unbelievably quiet. Such an athlete, just really composed on the ball, brilliant on the ball, rarely took the wrong option with the ball as well. He was a phenomenal player. Obviously as well, after 2 weeks after winning the hurling All-Ireland in '99, plays full back for the footballers 2 weeks later and won a Munster title with the footballers as well. That was just the athlete he could have been. He could have easily made it as an AFL player, he could have made it as a footballer. He obviously had to choose between the two of them, and it was hurling's game that he chose hurling.
And whereas Daly went back and managed pretty soon after retiring, he was dropped, or Seán Óg was dropped by Dennis Walsh, but called back in again by JBM and had another go for a brief time. Yeah, so I think we've it all said, have we?
Yeah, just on that as well, like I mentioned it earlier, if you're talking about, like, they're 2 of the great half back lines as well. You know, Doyle, McMahon, Daly, Gardner, Curran, Ó hAilpín. Like, the half back line is the launch pad of any team. And there's no reason, like, that's why Cork were so successful. One of the main reasons. That's why Clare were so successful. Be interesting to hear what people thought, which half back line they take, and whether they take Daly or Ó hAilpín. For me, marginally, it's Ó hAilpín. Love Daly as a player, love him as a pundit, but Ó hAilpín and just the fluent Gael gore and everything about him. He was worth kind of 2 lads nearly almost on the team. He was just phenomenal.
I know, I'll give Dale a nod. And we want people out there to let us know what you think and why. Also, those half back lines, they were so dominant, especially in eras where other teams didn't necessarily play tactics to draw half forwards out or whatever. It was, here's our wall of 3, there's your wall of 3.
Try and break it down.
Yeah, and by God, they really could.
They really could as
so
well.
That's it. Don't forget, if you want to get these jerseys, they're at orgaretro.com and use the promo code #OurGame and you'll get 15% off. Thanks for watching Our Game. Don't forget to like and share the videos, and if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe.